The afternoon sun filtered through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric shadows across our table. I watched my son Marcus push his Caesar salad around his plate, his eyes flickering nervously between his phone and the door. At 28, he'd developed the restless energy of someone always searching for an exit. "Mom, I need to use the restroom," he said abruptly, standing before I could respond. His chair scraped against the marble floor with a sound that made me wince. "We just got our food, sweetheart." "I know, I'll be quick." He was already walking away, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the tile. I'd bought him those shoes for his birthday last month after he'd mentioned being short on cash. Again. I turned back to my salmon, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Lunch with Marcus had become a monthly ritual I both cherished and dreaded. Each time, I hoped we'd recapture some fragment of the closeness we'd shared when he was younger, before his father died, before the money changed everything. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Each time, I left feeling more alone than when I'd arrived. My orange juice sat untouched beside my plate. I reached for it, grateful for something to do with my hands, when a voice stopped me. "Excuse me, ma'am." I looked up to find a security guard standing at my table. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and a name tag that read, Raymond. "Yes?" He glanced around, then leaned in slightly, his voice low. "I don't mean to alarm you, but I need to tell you something important. I saw your son, the young man you're dining with. I saw him pour something into your juice when you were looking at your phone a few minutes ago." The words didn't register immediately. They hung in the air between us like smoke, shapeless and impossible to grasp. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your juice, ma'am. When you were distracted, he took something from his pocket and poured it into your glass. I've been in security for 30 years. I know what I saw." The restaurant continued its elegant dance around us. The soft clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the gentle piano music from hidden speakers. But my world had suddenly gone silent, except for the thundering of my heart. "There must be some mistake," I heard myself say. "That's my son." Raymond's expression remained steady, sympathetic but certain. "I understand, ma'am. I have children too. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you what I saw. Don't drink that juice." He straightened, nodded politely, and walked away, returning to his post near the entrance. I stared at the glass of orange juice as if it might suddenly explain itself. The ice had begun to melt, creating tiny swirls in the amber liquid. This had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe Raymond had seen Marcus reach across the table, mistaken the angle, confused. But even as I formed these excuses, a colder voice in my mind whispered, "Remember the will." 3 weeks ago, Marcus had asked me about my estate planning. Not gently, not casually, but with an urgency that had surprised me. "Mom, you're only 62, but we should make sure everything's in order. You know, just in case." He'd brought paperwork, had suggestions about making him the primary beneficiary, about simplified processes that would avoid probate complications. I'd signed some documents, wanting to please him, wanting to prove that I trusted him with my legacy. After all, he was my only child, the center of my universe since his father's death 15 years ago. The insurance policy, $2 million. I'd increased it just last year. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Taking a call, be a few more minutes." I looked at the juice glass again, really looked at it. Was that a faint residue on the rim? Or was I imagining things, paranoia taking root like poison ivy? I picked up the glass carefully, my hand steadier than it had any right to be, and poured the entire contents into the decorative plant beside our booth. The liquid disappeared into the soil, leaving no trace. When Marcus returned 5 minutes later, his face was flushed, his collar slightly askew. "Sorry about that, work crisis." He slid into his seat and immediately looked at my glass. His eyes lingered there for just a fraction too long. "How's your juice?" he asked, too casually, too interested. "Refreshing," I lied, meeting his gaze. "I drank it all." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe disappointment. But it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Good, good. You need to stay hydrated." We finished our meal in strained conversation. Marcus seemed distracted, checking his watch repeatedly. I played my part perfectly, the doting mother oblivious to anything amiss. But inside I was calculating, planning, feeling something cold and hard crystallizing in my chest where maternal love had always been. He excused himself twice more during lunch, each time returning with that same flushed look, that same furtive energy. By the time the check arrived, I'd made my decision. "Marcus, sweetheart, I'm not feeling well. Suddenly very dizzy." His eyes sharpened with interest. "Really? Maybe you should lie down." "Would you mind driving me home? I don't think I should be behind the wheel." "Of course, Mom, of course." Was that eagerness in his voice? "Let's get you home right away." In the parking lot, as Marcus walked ahead to get his car, Raymond appeared at my elbow again. "Ma'am, are you—" "I didn't drink it," I said quietly. "Thank you for warning me." He nodded slowly. "What will you do?" "What I have to." The drive home was surreal. Marcus kept glancing at me, asking how I felt, suggesting I rest as soon as we arrived. His solicitude would have been touching if it weren't so sinister. "Just help me to the bedroom," I said weakly as we entered my house, the house where Marcus had grown up, where his father and I had built a life, where every room held memories that now felt tainted. "Should I call a doctor?" he asked, but he was already pulling out his phone, and I noticed he'd turned the sound off. No, I just need to sleep. Maybe something I ate." He helped me to the bed, arranged the pillows with exaggerated care. "I'll wait downstairs. Make sure you're okay." "You don't have to stay, dear. I know you're busy." "I'll stay," he said firmly. "I want to make sure you're all right." Of course he did. He needed to see the outcome of whatever he'd put in that juice. I closed my eyes, listening to his footsteps descend the stairs. Then I opened them again and got to work. First, I went to the safe in my closet, the one Marcus didn't know about, and retrieved the documents I'd signed 3 weeks ago. I'd made copies, naturally. I always made copies. As I read through them with clear eyes, I felt physically ill. The paperwork he'd had me sign didn't just make him primary beneficiary. It gave him power of attorney in case of my incapacitation, simplified distribution of my assets, and included language about natural death that now seemed chillingly prescient. Next, I called my lawyer, Martin Chen, on his private cell. "Eleanor, is everything all right?" "Martin, I need you to do something for me immediately. Don't ask questions yet, just listen." To his credit, he listened. 30 minutes later, I had an emergency appointment scheduled for first thing Monday morning to revoke every document Marcus had convinced me to sign. Then I called my doctor, Sarah Mitchell, who'd been my friend since college. "Sarah, I need a favor. I need you to run a talk screen on something, but I need you to do it quietly." "Eleanor, what's going on?" "I'll explain everything, but first, I need you to come to my house. Bring your medical kit. I need you to draw my blood." I could hear the concern in her voice, but she agreed. Sarah had been there through my husband's death, through Marcus's troubled teenage years, through everything. She trusted me enough to help without full explanations. While I waited for Sarah, I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched my son's room. It was exactly as he'd left it when he moved out 5 years ago, preserved like a shrine to the boy he'd been. But today, I looked with different eyes. And in the back of his closet, behind boxes of old textbooks and baseball trophies, I found a laptop. It was old, probably from college, but it still had power, and it wasn't password protected. What I found made my blood run cold. Emails, dozens of them, going back months. Correspondence with someone named Derek about the plan. References to inheritance acceleration. A saved article about undetectable poisons. Bank statements showing Marcus was over $300,000 in debt, gambling debts based on the payment recipients. And photos. Photos taken of me without my knowledge, in my garden, at the grocery store, sleeping in my chair. He'd been watching me, planning this. I heard the front door close, Marcus leaving his post. I heard his car start, drive away. He'd probably convinced himself I was unconscious, near death, that he needed to establish an alibi somewhere else. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later. She drew my blood, taking multiple vials, her face grave. "Eleanor, whatever's happening, you need to tell me." So I did. I told her everything. The lunch, the security guard's warning, the documents, what I'd found in Marcus's room. With each revelation, her expression grew darker. "We need to call the police," she said. "Not yet. I need to know what he used, if it's even still in my system, and I need—" I paused, the enormity of what I was planning settling over me. "I need him to confess. I need to know why. I need to understand how my son could do this to me." Sarah looked at me for a long moment. "This is dangerous, Eleanor." "He's already dangerous, and he thinks he's won." The blood test results came back 48 hours later, delivered to Sarah's private office. She called me immediately, her voice shaking. "Eleanor, it's temazepam, a very high dose mixed with something else. We're still identifying it, but it looks like some kind of cardiac accelerant. Combined, in someone your age, it would likely cause what appeared to be a heart attack or stroke. Relatively quick, probably within a few hours. And if no one thought to look for it, it would seem natural." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, the same chair where I'd fed Marcus breakfast before school for 18 years. "How long will it stay in my system?" "It's mostly metabolized already, but we can still detect it for another few days. Eleanor, this is evidence. We have to—" "Not yet," I interrupted. "Trust me, Sarah, please." She was silent, then sighed. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give my son exactly what he thinks he wants." I didn't answer Marcus's calls for 3 days. Each voicemail grew progressively more panicked. By the 3rd day, he showed up at my house, using his key without knocking. Mom, where are you? I've been worried sick." I was sitting in the living room, very much alive, very much waiting. His face when he saw me was a complicated tapestry of emotions. Relief, confusion, and, I saw it clearly now, disappointment. "Marcus, I'm fine, dear. Just needed some time to myself." "You weren't answering your phone. After you were sick the other day, I thought—" He couldn't finish the sentence. What had he thought? That I died alone in this house? "Sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk." He sat, but his body was rigid, alert, the way a predator sits when it realizes it might also be prey. "I've been thinking about my will," I said conversationally. "About those documents you had me sign." His eyes flickered. "What about them?" "I think it's all too complicated. I've decided to simplify everything. Martin is drawing up new paperwork. You'll inherit everything directly, no trusts, no conditions. Immediate transfer upon my death." I watched carefully. A normal, innocent son would protest, would ask why I was thinking about death, would be uncomfortable with the topic. Marcus leaned forward, interested. "Really? That's That's great, Mom. Much simpler. Yes, and I've increased my life insurance again to $3 million now. You'll be very comfortable. Mom, you don't have to. I want to. You're my son, my only family. Everything I have should be yours. I let that sit between us, watched him process it, watched greed and calculation play across his face. There's just one thing, I continued. I need you to take me to lunch again next week. That same restaurant, my treat, to celebrate this new arrangement. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Mom. I'd love that. The week that followed was the longest of my life. I involved 4 people in my plan: Sarah, Martin, Raymond the security guard, and Detective Lisa Brennan, who'd been skeptical until she saw the blood test results and the evidence from Marcus's laptop. This is highly irregular, Detective Brennan said when I outlined my plan, and potentially dangerous. He's my son, I replied. I need to give him one chance to walk away, one chance to choose differently. And if he doesn't, then we finish this. The restaurant was busy when we arrived the following Tuesday. Raymond was at his post, meeting my eyes briefly. At a corner booth, barely visible, sat Detective Brennan and her partner, dressed as a couple on a date. Marcus was nervous, I could tell. He kept looking around, his leg bouncing under the table. Are you all right, sweetheart? I asked. Fine, just fine. We ordered the same food as last time: salmon for me, Caesar salad for him, and orange juice. Always orange juice. This time, when Marcus excused himself to the restroom, I was ready. A tiny camera, pinned to my jacket, recorded everything. The table had been wired with audio equipment that morning, courtesy of the restaurant owner who'd been horrified by Raymond's account of what had happened. I pretended to check my phone, angling my body away from the table, giving him opportunity. Through my peripheral vision, I saw him return. Saw his hand move quickly, a small vial palmed from his pocket. Saw him pour something into my drink, swirling the glass with a practiced motion. My heart broke and hardened simultaneously. He sat down, his smile bright and false. Sorry about that. No problem, dear. I reached for the juice glass, brought it to my lips, then stopped. You know, I've been thinking. About what? About how much you've changed since your father died, how much you've needed money over the years, how I've always helped because that's what mothers do. His face went pale. Mom, and I've been thinking about 3 weeks ago when you had me sign those documents about how you asked me to lunch right after I increased my insurance policy. I don't know what you're talking about. I set the glass down carefully, precisely. I'm talking about the temazepam and cardiac accelerant you put in my juice 3 weeks ago, the same thing you just put in this glass. The silence that followed was absolute. In my peripheral vision, I saw Detective Brennan rise from her booth. Marcus's face transformed, the mask finally falling away. What looked back at me was a stranger, cold, calculating, desperate. How did you drank it? I saw you drink it. I poured it into a plant. Thanks to Raymond, the security guard who saw you. Marcus turned, spotting Raymond, then noticed Detective Brennan approaching. His eyes darted around, looking for escape, but there was none. You were going to kill me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Your own mother, for money. You don't understand, he hissed. I'm in debt. Bad people, Mom. They were going to kill me. I had no choice. You always have a choice. You could have come to me, told me the truth, asked for help. I did. I asked for money a dozen times, and you gave me your lectures about responsibility, about earning things, about... He stopped himself, but the damage was done. The truth was out. So this was about more than the debt. This was about resentment, about believing you deserved my money more than I deserved my life. Detective Brennan was at the table now, her badge visible. "Marcus Thornton, I need you to come with me." "This is entrapment," Marcus shouted, standing abruptly. "She set me up." "You poisoned yourself into a confession," Detective Brennan replied calmly. "And we have video of you adulterating her drink just now. Not to mention evidence from 3 weeks ago and a tox screen showing the same substance in your mother's blood." As they led him away, Marcus looked back at me one last time. "Mom, please, I'm your son." "I know," I said quietly. "That's what makes this unbearable." The trial took 8 months. During that time, investigators discovered that Marcus's gambling debts were even worse than I'd known, nearly $500,000 owed to people who'd made explicit threats. They also found evidence that this hadn't been his first attempt. 3 months before the lunch incident, he'd tampered with the brakes on my car, but I'd had them replaced before anything happened. He'd been escalating, getting more desperate. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Attempted murder, guilty. I attended every day of the trial. I owed him that much, though I couldn't say why. Maybe because he was still my son, even if that son had died somewhere along the way, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. When the judge handed down the sentence, 15 to 25 years, Marcus finally broke. He sobbed in court, apologizing over and over, insisting he'd never have gone through with it, that he'd been scared, that I had to forgive him. I stood up to leave and spoke to him for the last time. "I hope you find peace, Marcus. I hope you find whatever it is you've been searching for all these years. But I can't help you anymore. I can't save you from yourself. Mom, please. Goodbye, son." That was 2 years ago. I still live in the same house, though I've redecorated Marcus's room. It's a home office now, bright and functional, with no shrine to the past. Raymond and I have become friends. We meet for coffee once a month, and he's teaching me about security systems and personal safety. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if he'd been on his break that day, or if he'd decided it wasn't his business, or if he'd doubted what he'd seen. Sarah checks on me weekly, though the blood tests stopped showing any traces of the poison after the first month. She says I'm healthier now than I've been in years, though we both know she doesn't just mean physically. Martin helped me create a new will. A significant portion of my estate will go to organizations that help families dealing with addiction and gambling debt. The rest will fund scholarships for young people who've lost parents and are struggling financially. Marcus's name doesn't appear anywhere in the documents. I've had therapy, a lot of it. Dr. Yolanda Rodriguez has helped me process the grief, because it is grief, mourning someone who's still alive but gone nonetheless. She's helped me understand that I didn't fail as a mother, that some people make choices we can't predict or prevent, that love isn't always enough to save someone who's drowning in their own darkness. Last month, I received a letter from Marcus, his first communication since the trial. In it, he apologized again. He told me about therapy in prison, about facing his addictions, about understanding the magnitude of what he'd tried to do. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but hoped I could find peace. I read it 3 times, then put it in a box with all the letters from his childhood, the Mother's Day cards, the drawings he'd made in kindergarten. A memorial to who he might have been. I haven't written back. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll find that forgiveness he's seeking. But not today. Today, I'm learning to live with the truth that the son I loved died long before he tried to kill me, and I'm finally allowing myself to grieve that loss. I still have lunch at that restaurant sometimes, always at the same table. Raymond joins me occasionally, and we talk about everything except that day, though it sits between us like a shared secret, like a moment when someone's watchfulness saved not just a life, but the truth itself. And I order orange juice every time. Not to prove anything, not to overcome fear, but to remind myself that I survived, that I'm stronger than I knew, that even when the person who should have protected you becomes the threat, you can protect yourself. The juice always tastes a little bitter now, but I drink it anyway, every drop, because I'm still here. And that's something Marcus tried to take from me but couldn't. That's something I won, not revenge exactly. Justice, perhaps. Or maybe just the fierce, terrible knowledge that when forced to choose between being his mother and surviving his betrayal, I chose myself. And every morning when I wake up in my house, in my life, with my future still unfolding before me, I know I made the right choice. Even if some mornings I still cry for the boy he used to be.